Hey, I'm here with André Boulay, the owner of YoyoExpert. Andre, how are you doing today?
I'm great. How you doing, Doc?
I'm doing very well. Allergies kicking in, which is better than like wildfire smoke that's we
It's
usually
so
have.
wild. So today we stepped outside and it was hazy and smelled like fire. And apparently the fires made their way all the way from California to the East Coast. So
So weird.
pretty crazy. Yeah. So we're kind of
Yeah,
connected there.
yeah. Last year they were just kind of
Fortunately.
stuck here, and it sounds like this year, like we haven't even experienced them in San Francisco, but you're getting them all the way on the. It's so crazy.
It's wild. Wild
So,
times we live in.
Andre, I wanted to know how you got into yo-yoing.
Yeah. Well, I started yo-yoing around 2000, 2001. Just about as the boom had died. It wasn't cool. It was at the A to Z Science and Learning store that me and my wife now both co-own and operate. And I walked in one day, saw somebody throwing a yo-yo, and thought it wasn't cool. And my mom's like, "But they teach lessons. We're gonna bring your brother. Check it out." There was an amazing teacher here who was teaching my brother, but he's like, "You can't just stand here and watch. You're gonna throw." Taught me how to throw on a broken Omega brain that wouldn't actually sleep. And it was one of the reasons I got so into it is I couldn't get the yo-yo to sleep. And my brother, who was 5 years younger than me, got so frustrated, went home, stole his fireball, stuck with it, and it just like couldn't put it down after that. And then we had a really awesome demonstration team here at A to Z, so we would all come hang out, and it was just as things were really starting to explode with the internet and people sharing videos. Sector Y was brand new. I remember downloading videos for hours online, and we had some amazing innovators out here. Nate Sutter, who still throws insane tricks. Alex Ziniak, Jordan Cooper, to name a few. So I would hang out with them and watch them literally make up tricks. And I would go online and try and download, and see what Paul Escolar had come up with. And then it just it was perfect timing. Just got me pulled in, and I've never left. Loving yo-yo.
That's cool. For a second, the way I was imagining the story was you went to the toy store, they gave you a broken Omega, and you decided, I'm going to buy this place and fire that guy for I thought it's going to take a twist.
I mean, at 14, I don't know if I even was quite ready for that, but I was a little older. I could have been like, you know what, I'm going to fix this place and
Yeah,
do it right.
fix this place. I think
I should add,
mhm.
my favorite trick when I first got, decent enough at doing string tricks at yo-yoing was skin the gerbil. And I can still have very vivid memories watching your video. I downloaded off Sector Y over and over again and obsessing about that trick. And I remember I would do that trick too, and people were always like, "Oh my god, that's one of the best skin the gerbils I've ever seen." And I just remember always thinking "Man, Doc just makes up the best tricks." Because was Zerber yours too? Do you remember that?
No, no,
Oh,
I'm sure that's a Spencer trick or something.
it was. Do you know that one?
No.
Zerber. It was this trick where you brought the string around it from the center. But the other one I used to love that I do know for sure was from you. I remember actually I was at Y3A 2001, and you were doing a workshop. I think you did a 5A workshop right when 5A was whoa. And then it was the one where you use the reverse spin of the yo-yo to pull out, to pull into a spirit bomb mount.
Hmm.
What's the name of that trick?
De-evolution.
Yeah,
It's a
de-evolution.
friction mount.
Yeah, yeah. So I remember learning that from you at Y3A 2K1, and that was pretty awesome. So
Cool. Yeah, the friction mounts. Those were fun. Man, lots of good memories. Uh,
yeah.
so so now we know how you got into yo-yoing. Uh, what was it like switching? I mean, you were a pro for Yo-Yo Jam for
hmm
many years, and then you kind of switched positions. You went from being a player to being a store owner. What was that like?
Yeah, I mean, it was funny. It's one of the most natural, organic things about everything that happened. I was working for Yo-Yo Jam. I had started running their team. I was doing a lot of design, obviously doing a ton of traveling for them too and demonstrating. So I had learned a lot on that end of things, and I was finishing up grad school. I did a research in the kinesiology department, trying to finish a master's in the neuroscience program they had, and I got really burned out on the research side of things. And I was like, man, I want to try and find something else to do. And at the same time, I had just recently filmed all of the tutorials with Expert Village at the time. So Expert Village had hired a lot of random people to film tutorials. And so I remember in a day we shot, I think it was like 80 to 120 videos in a day or something like that. I can't remember. It was all just one takes. I remember thinking, no one's ever going to like learn from these because like the video quality is going to be horrible. And I mean, people weren't learning from video, people talking and teaching tricks over video at that point either. I had like trick tutorials posted on my website, but it wasn't the same thing. But those got posted, and so everybody was emailing me like on a constant basis asking me like, what yo-yo should I buy? I'm learning this trick from you on Expert Village right now. And so the combination of like sitting, not really wanting to do my research work anymore, and then having all these emails stream in, I was like, I think I just like, I want to take some time and build a place where I can like showcase what I think is the best way for people to learn how to yo-yo. And then obviously kind of connect and build a community around yo-yo. And so I had also been really active online, like building communities and forums and stuff like that. I was always really obsessed with forum software because when I worked for Yo-Yo Jam, my job was to like look at the forums on all the different, skill toy websites and everything, and then respond and help. So it just kind of like came out of all of that, like experience and knowledge, and came together into the one site. And my original intention wasn't even necessarily to sell yo-yos. I was going to like sell dark magics at the time. That was what everybody was coming and wanting to buy anyways. But my wife also graduated from college at the same time, had a graphic arts degree, and it just kind of continued to take off between the two of us because we were able to present products and tell the story of the product in a way that I think hadn't necessarily been done yet at the time. And that's kind of how it all flowed into what it is today. So
I owned a yo-yo store for a while, and I had some weird returns. And I'm just kind of wondering, what is the weirdest yo-yo return you've gotten at YoYoExpert?
Oh man, the weirdest yo-yo return. I mean, you get the semi-regular ones that like they come back to you and like, the product's supposed to be mint, and it's like literally there's no anodize left on the outer rim. It's been like, run across the pavement so many times. I mean, we've definitely gotten like things back in the mail that like weren't yo-yos because somebody accidentally sent the wrong thing back or whatever. But I feel like the postal service usually presents the most interesting returns, like when things come back to us and they've just like been destroyed. Because we had one drop yo-yo that I don't know if like a fridge fell on it, but it had actually like been collapsed into like, normally it was this big, and it came in the box, collapsed into that, just completely destroyed. But I mean, that's probably the weirdest one. I don't have a lot of other weird stories because everything else in my head is always so normal, I think, too.
I've got one for you.
Yeah, go ahead. Okay. Yeah. Now I'm very interested to hear. You might spur my...
So I had a store called Yo Mama's Yo-Yo Cart in St. Louis, Missouri.
Oh, yeah.
And this was after the boom. I worked for the company before the boom. Things were amazing. But after the boom, man, it was just dry. It was so dry. And you're competing with, stores like the toy stores had clearance, 99-cent versions of things you're still selling at full price or whatever. So it's super hard to compete. But I remember somebody bought a Bumblebee GT from me, and they came back a couple days later, with their thank you shopping bag and kind of like this guilty look on their face. And their mom was like, go ahead, go talk to him. And so this kid came up to me real sheepishly, and he said, I want to return a yo-yo. And I said, sure, buddy. What's wrong with it? And he said, this thing melts too easy. And then he pulls this thing out, which is...
Oh my God, you still have
it? This thing melts too easy. I want to return this yo-yo because it melts too easy. This thing is burned.
Destroyed.
Destroyed. Melts too easy.
It, like, over a candle, or it got
Well,
dropped in the fire pit or
it's
something, huh?
it's
That's
beautiful. It's a
amazing.
work of art. It's a little yin
Yeah,
yang,
yeah.
and it still had the stretched out strings of plastic, like from like when he pulled it away. Apparently, a lamp had fallen on it and kind of sat
Oh,
on it for
wow.
like an hour. And luckily, it didn't start a fire. Obviously not my fault. How the hell are you going to try to return something when a lamp fell on it for an hour? And his mom is so indignant, like oh, and I was just like, look, there's no way I'm going to give you a refund for this, but I'll buy it from you for $20, which I think they cost like $35. It's like, so I did not return this kid's money because he let
Right.
a lamp fall on it, but I did buy this piece of art. And yeah, to this day, this is still like just kind of a reminder of what it's like to be in retail.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is pretty wild and crazy, like what people try and return. Um, and with that said, I feel like yo-yos have evolved to a point now where it's a lot harder to destroy them. So thankfully, I do feel like we're able to fix a lot of what people send back. 'Cause, I mean, we get a lot of stuff back that's weird stuff, but usually it's like we might be able to like kind of re-drill and get an axle back in place or something, or swap the parts out and stuff. They're a little more durable now in that sense. But yeah, that's pretty hilarious. That's one for the books you got there.
So, as a store owner, as the owner of YoYoExpert, can you tell me which company is the best?
All of them.
All of them. Okay. Dr. Popular.
I mean, I actually, yeah, Dr. Popular, for your mother. I think actually it's like one of my favorite parts about yo-yoing, and I will say, like, in terms of our store, I mean, when I first started Yo-Yo Expert, it was Yo-Yo Jam because I worked for Yo-Yo Jam, and there was totally a weird conflict of interest thing. But I hadn't actually intended on being a store at the time. I had intended on my real goal was actually to sell tutorial videos. I had never intended on selling yo-yos necessarily. I was going to sell some dark magics to raise money, to buy video equipment, and then like ideally I wanted to like make DVDs, teaching people tricks. Because my hope was I could really encourage people to develop good tricks to then teach to people, and then further encourage them to kind of make more tricks that were good to teach, kind of thing. And it was weird timing with the whole collapse of DVD and selling content market until like everything is kind of free in that sense. So selling products kind of became the norm at that point. So like it switched gears naturally to work with other companies. And the first company I worked with obviously was Yo-Yo Factory, being kind of the big guys they were. And I mean, they've been by far like one of our biggest, supporters. We really rely on having a good connection with them, and they do a lot of really good things in terms of their team, and they really understand, I think, the big picture behind like what is modern yo-yo, trying to get yo-yos into people's hands and everything. But all that aside, I think that's the beautiful thing with everybody else that's in the industry is, and what we kind of organically grew into is like we're a place that kind of has worked with a little bit of everybody, and I think everybody brings something special to it, because you really need Yo-Yo Factory, who's making the plastics, the beginners, the range of yo-yos that are very approachable depending on where you're coming from. Then you've got like somebody like One Drop, where they still are making stuff in the USA, and a very different approach too, doing things with side effects, and just doing things that are very different. And then you've got all the other companies doing lots of different things in different ways. And I mean, there's so much personality in yo-yo. I think that's one of the things I've always loved about it, and that's why it's so interesting and kind of keeps people coming back to it. Like, so in that sense, like, I think that's my favorite thing about yo-yo, is that it's not all about one company. It's about this collection of just like really cool people doing weird things that they also then love and can sell, and it just kind of continues on like that.
Well, let's change gears a little bit. How has the pandemic changed yo-yoing?
Yeah, it's been a weird year and a half. I mean, when it first hit, it was kind of like I was actually getting ready to run a yo-yo contest. The weekend it hit, I had to personally decide to cancel the contest myself. And then the state of Massachusetts said we couldn't run it anyways. By the time we hit the weekend, I canceled it on like a Wednesday. And then by Friday, I think they said no more events. And so the lack of contests was really weird, because that's always been a big driving force just in terms of like some of the cycles within yo-yoing, in terms of like big releases, and there's always kind of a narrative around worlds and nationals and what are people using to throw. So at first I think there was kind of this like, man, what's it going to be like? But there was, obviously everyone's stuck at home, this huge influx of people looking, either they had, we had a lot of people get into yo-yo that used to be into yo-yo. I was listening to Ben McPhee talk with you there, and there was a lot of people that got into yo-yo from, the early 2000s that hadn't been throwing yo-yos, and that was such an amazingly awesome thing. And a lot of them are still doing it. I think one of the cool things too is with Duncan reintroducing like the whole freehand, and especially the freehand one aluminum classic kind of remake of that. A lot of people who were big into yo-yo back in early 2000s saw that and got so excited that there was a yo-yo that they remembered that was kind of modernized in the middle of the pandemic, that they kind of got back into yo-yo in a lot of big ways. So I've seen a lot of people throwing that I was really good friends with early 2000s that are all of a sudden way back into it and probably had been out of it for a good 8 or 10 years. And then, we've got TikTok and like the birth of the DNA, and this huge influx of people getting to see yo-yo for the first time in a lot of different avenues, and Gentry kind of going viral with PewDiePie on YouTube and stuff, like lots of weird connections and people coming in. So yeah, I think it's been it's been way better than I expected. There's been a lot of good interest, a lot of people very interested in buying yo-yos for the first time. I think the other big thing too that I found was that there's a big interest in people collecting yo-yos again, because I do feel like the collector market has been a little bit more of a weirder market. Like, I think the big things with yo-yos is they're always very exciting to collect and build a really nice collection and appreciate why yo-yo is special. And I think in the past, 10 years, some companies, do a really good job, like making a collectible yo-yo and kind of telling the story and keeping it special. And then sometimes maybe not. And I think a lot of collectors that used to collect in the early 2000s kind of fell out of collecting over time. And I have seen a big resurgence of people excited about what makes a yo-yo special, like how many are made, what's this colorway, what's the story behind the company. And then of course, like weird yo-yos and more unusual shapes and designs are really kind of catching people's eyes. So there's a lot of like back and forth there with what people are getting into that I love. So yeah, it's been in many ways like a lot of really interesting good things. And then we kind of just have to do a slow reboot into yo-yo contests and hope we can rebuild what structure was there. So
you mentioned weird yo-yos. I've definitely seen a trend. I feel like there was a trend of all yo-yos being just a slight, like a millimeter bigger than another one, or a gram heavier or a gram lighter. They were pretty much becoming kind of the standardized wedge shape. And I like to think, and I don't know if this is true, but I like to think that during the pandemic, because of lack of contests, people just started wanting to play with yo-yos that felt fun. So we saw like a return of organic yo-yos. We saw a new experimentation with ultralights and ultra wides and smalls and weird shapes. But that's probably just some narrative I'm like trying to fit. I mean, have you seen any evidence of that in sales or anything that say, oh, the pandemic is changing the types of yo-yos people are buying?
Yeah, I mean, I would back that up to a certain extent. I think the trend had already started. And I will say it is very much demographic based in terms of like where you are. We're in the USA. USA market is, at least in my experience with who we sell yo-yos to, people are very much interested in the weird, the unusual, the fun, sometimes whimsical kind of focus on like, and the kind of back to like what I was saying, like what's the story behind this and what makes this cool and interesting, not necessarily about like what is the longest spinning, most extreme shape, because what I get from Japan is that is very much what makes Japan's market work is, it's all about like what is the best yo-yo for competition. And in the US, I do think COVID really furthered it because we had a lot of people getting into yo-yo that, definitely there's no contests. And I think they're the kind of people that do kind of just want to have fun with it. It's more laid back. It's more, just want to kind of chill out and enjoy the yo-yo. And yeah, I mean, there's only, you really want to feel like the soul in a yo-yo when you're looking for different things and you're enjoying it for what it is rather than just trying to do the longest combo or like what's the longest rail combo I can hit or what's the longest sideways combo I can hit and stuff. Like that's not what people are doing. Like we're learning, like, we're learning fun tricks and trying to do different things or discover different tricks and stuff like that. And I feel like trying different yo-yos is the best way to do that. And so like to further that, I feel like that's just kind of where the market was going. And then COVID was just the best kind of trigger to make that bigger and better. But a lot of that had been happening. I think people saw that was working because there were definitely a lot of weird yo-yos that had already kind of been trending towards that. So I do think you're onto something though with that. So
you mentioned something that really kind of opens my eyes a little bit. The yo-yos in the US and the yo-yos kind of for the US market are slowly becoming a little lighter and a little more organic. And when I'm saying organic, I assume most people know, but like a wedge-shaped competition yo-yo usually kind of has this hard V shape and, really just designed to like easy to land on there and maximum spin and, as a little friction as possible. And organics are going to have these high walls and just more rounded shape. And the weight distribution is going to be way different on some of these yo-yos. You might have a lot more middle weight on what we refer to as a floaty yo-yo, where this is going to be all rim weight. And what you're really kind of blowing my mind is I have seen a shift in yo-yos, but actually now that I think about it, I've seen a shift in American yo-yos, and the yo-yos coming from Asia still have the very hard shapes and very competition driven. And in general, I think even without the pandemic, the competition is a bigger part of the Japanese yo-yo community and in China as well. And in the US, it's maybe not so hardcore. There's certainly hardcore players, but I think for a lot of people like myself, it's just a place to go and share tricks with people. So yeah, that's kind of interesting that definition was already happening, and then with the pandemic happening, where there's just literally no contest in the U.S., it feels like this was something that was already happening because we weren't really competition focused or as competition focused, and yeah, it just kind of sped it up a little.
Yeah, true. It's like the lack of contests, and then you have an increase in new people, so it kind of naturally kind of pushes it more towards fun, weird, cool, unusual. Yeah, I mean, it's always kind of like in Japan's market, obviously still loves weird, fun, cool stuff. But there's definitely a very different culture, and sometimes it can be funny to release it. I mean, I remember this with Yo-Yo Jam days so much. Like we would release a yo-yo and like, oh my God, it's so crazy in the US. And you release in Japan, it was like, yeah, no one even wants it. Like, you're like, what's going on? You got to like talk to 3 different people to kind of get the whole story about like, oh, there's actually like this part of the image looks like this and it means this. And so sometimes it's hard to even kind of wrap your head around like where the differences come from. I mean, that's kind of in my head what I'm guessing just from my experience, but I'm not even positive that's what it is. But you're right, angular lawn spin time definitely seems to be so key in Japan. We're okay losing a little spin time if it feels pretty cool on the string, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the big words this past year, the big words of 2020 were like fun and floaty. And it's been so long since anyone defined a yo-yo or described a yo-yo as feeling fun. Like, it was really nice to hear reviewers say, this yo-yo feels fun. Because before it would have been like, that's just not a word you describe yo-yos with. You talk about like performance or whatever. And now there's like, it feels fun. It either feels fun or it doesn't. And yeah, that return, has kind of made me happy. I'm not a, competition thrower, but that being said, I think this is a good segue. I am releasing a new yo-yo that's my first wedge shape yo-yo. My first what shape would you call this?
Yeah, I mean, going back to One Drop's whole release of their ranges, I mean, I think most people call it V-shaped. But I mean, I think before that it was competition, rim weighted, competition shaped, but yeah, V-shaped, rim weighted.
So this is the very first V-shape competition style yo-yo I've designed. I made it it's a signature yo for Shawn Garcia, who goes by Yo Toy Images on Instagram. He makes these amazing photos of yo-yos he does more than just this, but like I first noticed his photography when he had these yo-yos that were sort of disassembling and floating in the air, and you could see the bearing and the pads and all that stuff. So I reached out to Shawn and said, hey, if you could design a yo-yo specifically for photography, what would it look like? And 30 minutes later, he texted me back a drawing that's like the drawing on the cup. And as soon as I saw that drawing, I'm like, that's the logo. And what he was trying to do was, I saw that it was a V shape based on the drawing, but he was trying to give it these ridges to pick up light. Really interesting, specifically because these will pick up lights in more drastic, high contrast ways than a rounded, shape would. So this is my very first V shape competition yo-yo. It still has like a lot of touches, I think, that make it a Doc Pop kind of product, like the organic bowl on the inside in contrast to the hard edges.
Yeah, I mean, I do have to say, I haven't seen many shapes that kind of feature that nice kind of concave with the whole V shape on the outside. That's a nice touch. So
I have to say, I feel like it makes the yo-yo feel floaty while still being kind of a competition design.
Love it.
Yeah, like the weight distribution is going to be a little bit, because if you kind of think about where that mass is going to be, if you have a hard line here and a curve here, you're going to have a little bit more mass here, which, a little more middleweight, even though it doesn't have the nipple on the side.
Yeah, I mean, also it looks like you preserved a very, because usually like the more angular shape sometimes can sit in the hand and not necessarily feel really comfortable, or when they snap back, and you can see you rounded it out really nice. That it probably feels really good in the hand, and then all the angular shapes like he did, that's really awesome. Like, I love the story and focus on like trying to make something that's very visually pleasing for what his photo work does, because you're right, like he's like very captivating. Like, I can still remember the first time I saw one of his exploding shots, and I mean, everyone asked the same thing. It's just like, whoa, how did he do that? Like, it just looks like magic. So even like cooler, that like dark magic. Yeah.
Well, the reason I'm bringing this up, I didn't mean to get into a sales pitch, and I know that all sounded very sales pitchy, but the reason I wanted to get into this is because August 2nd, which this video should be out around then, this is going to be on yoyoexpert.com and drpopular.com. You will have a red fade. Have you seen them in person yet?
No, I haven't.
Okay, yeah.
I'm very excited.
So you were looking for like a red-black fade. I actually did a red fade, kind of inspired by Kyle Nations, and I did a weekender for Kyle that was like a blue to bluish green and just super cool, subtle.
I love that.
So yeah, that's going to be exclusive on your store, and we're doing a photo contest together, and the rules for that will be available if you go to the forums.yoyoexpert.com. But the basic idea of the contest, just to sum it up, is that I made one special color Shawn Exploder. There's only one green Shawn Exploder in the world. It's kind of a forest green. I don't have it with me. It's in the mail.
That's wild. Cool.
Yeah. And that's going to go to the winner of this contest. And what we're going to do is, I think a month, August 2nd to August 31st, have people post a photo of their Shawn Exploder on Instagram and use hashtag Shawn Exploder. And we're going to have some judges. We haven't worked that out yet. We're going to have some judges determining which photo is quantifiably the best photo of all the Shawn Exploder photos. And so that'll be, for the details and all that, I'll have a link in the doobly-doo, but that'll be on forums.yoyoexpert.com, which, by the way, forums.yoyoexpert.com, it's so nice. It definitely brings back those vibes of, yoyo.com/news.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, forum communities are kind of like in the DNA of what made modern yo-yo, I think, too, in terms of people connecting. And, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all have their place. But I do feel like the forums kind of allow you to have a conversation, keep a conversation going in a way that you can't really do as easily on all those other platforms. And the community is a good community. I've been really happy with just how caring people have been there about each other and stuff. So yeah, come join.
I love it. It's a very inclusive forum. It's very positive. It's great. I really love it. So I want to transition just to the last few questions here. First off, I want to say thanks to Taka from Spin Gear, and John Anderson, and all the rest of my patreon.com/DocPop
Love those
sponsors.
guys.
Yeah, and some disclosure, Andre, you are also like a $2 level sponsor or whatever. You're like one of the sponsors, not one of the. You're not like funding this. This isn't. I just
no, I'm not funding this. I think like $20 a month.
Yeah, this is not.
But
SpawnCon.
everybody should go support you.
Yeah. So
I
I
keep
asked
people and doing this that like I think also just to throw out like a pitch for you like. Seeing somebody take yo-yo seriously and want to get other people excited about yo-yo for the reasons that you want them to get excited about yo-yo and make content too. I would love to see more people doing this and doing it well. So you're a great example of somebody doing cool things in yo-yo that we need more of. So
well, thank you so much. So I asked on Patreon if anyone had any questions for you, and we have one from Alexander Ramos. It's actually kind of a two-parter. One is, what projects is Andre working on, and is there any updates on a future dark magic?
Oh man, I know, right? That's kind of been the never-ending ongoing project in the background. But what have I been working on? So man. Well, like for 3 or 4 years, I've been like rebooting our actual website because I've always had things I wanted to do that I couldn't really do within the frameworks of what we did when we rebooted because, the internet really transformed quite a bit since 2008 when we first launched the store. I had hand coded the entire website myself, HTML, and like even the first transaction we did, I hard coded like the Perl script and PHP files to send it to the authorized.net credit card processor and stuff. So it's a very different game. I used to be able to like put an image right where I want it to be and kind of tell the story the way I wanted. And with iPhones and everything, it's a very different world. So everything we learned about going to a responsive website I've taken, and we're trying to like rebuild a website that I feel like is a lot more exciting in terms of like learning yo-yo tricks and stuff, as well as like telling the story of the products themselves and stuff. So that's been this huge ongoing project that COVID once again kind of derailed because my time has been all over the place with different things. But along with that, one of the other cool projects that's kind of finally kicking back into gear is on the forums, the whole Ty Walker thing with the discourse. Jason Atwood ran a whole thing and raised some money to kind of help start a yo-yo club program we agreed upon with some of the funds that came out of the Ty Vader thing. So we had already started planning the whole yo-yo club program thing, and I have at the store A to Z that we own for the past like year and a half been kind of piloting a whole like yo-yo club program. We built like a really nice trickless lanyard style thing, and we're trying to build a way for people that want to start a yo-yo club in their area, whether it's like, at your library or at your boys and girl club, or it could just be like anywhere you find a place to meet, but trying to find a way to like empower people to want to get out there and kind of have like a way to actually start a club and help fund them starting the club, like with actual like yo-yo club kit and stuff like that. So all that's finally kind of coming together because we were getting ready to like get everything together right as COVID hit, and that didn't happen. So I'm pulling the trigger on a lot of that stuff that's really exciting, like trying to teach people how to start a club and everything. So that's coming. And then, I mean, dark magic is kind of this ongoing, I'm definitely planning on revisiting it. I won't say anything too much more specific about, I've had a lot of ideas. I even have prototypes of stuff. So we've gotten pretty close to something, and it's definitely a special, yo-yo history to me that I want to make sure I kind of keep on. So it will return.
Just wanted to pull this out. I don't know if this is like sinful or not, but this is my dark magic bootleg. Still like in a package, just beautiful. Like every now and then I'm like, I pull it out forgetting, like I don't even know how I got this, but every now and then like I pull it out, I'm like, oh, I didn't know Yo-Yo Jam did like this package. This is a really cool package. And like they localized it for like, yeah, it's a really cool package. It looks great. It's got like a belt clip on
Yeah.
it, like so you can. Oh, man, this is so. Anyway, I just find these guys and just be like, hey, I know
Yeah.
I wasn't happy with you at the time, but like, let's let's come back to this. When you're talking about doing dark magic, that was a Yo-Yo Jam yo-yo that you did, and I'm kind of interested. Are you working with them in any way? Like, have you already worked with them? Have you negotiated? You know that because the reason I'm asking, quite frankly, is I want to redo the Bolt. You know, the original Bolt, and I'm like, they're out of business. They've been out of business for like 8 years. It's just kind of a word, you know. I'm not going to be using their CAD files
Right.
or whatever.
Right.
So like, is that cool or like whatever? So I'm kind of wondering what you did because
Yeah.
I'm
I
going to be like
mean,
Andre.
I still do keep in touch with Yo-Yo Jam and Dale Bell and Valerie, who used to run it, and obviously good relationship there. And then, of course, I yo-yo with Dave Geigel, who used to be on Yo-Yo Jam's team when I was running it too, has kind of rebooted a lot of previous Yo-Yo Jam models that weren't even part of his kind of signature series, the Night Moves, and he redid the Spin Master. And so, you know, Yo-Yo Jam, I think in general too, was a company built out of like, they were just like, we just want to make cool stuff, you know? And I think for a while it was a really good thing. And then it ran its course and it was hard for them to keep up being USA made, competing with all the incoming China plastics and everything. And so on the flip side of that, I think they have been very honest and straightforward that they just want to see all the people that were part of Yo-Yo Jam to kind of go on and succeed, because all of those people involved in those signature series also kind of helped build Yo-Yo Jam into what they were. And I think they always recognized that it was kind of like an equal footing. Like, yes, they gave the platform for people to build a product and promote it. And at the same point, those people like poured a lot of blood, sweat into creating those. And so I think there's like a healthy ownership on both sides to them. And I don't think at this point that they would claim ownership necessarily, especially if it was tied to a specific individual like that. But, you know, I was always upfront with them in the sense that I always wanted to see dark magic kind of continue on. And I mean, for me too, I think it's like one of those things. It's a little bit like your child, like when you like you put as much energy into creating something like that, like you do feel like you own it a little bit, even if you don't. So I do. Dark magic to me is like very much a part of my whole story and where I went into, and I'll never forget that Yo-Yo Jam helped me to do that. And at the same time, I think it needs to live on, and I think they would agree with that and wouldn't hold back. And I would say the same thing about the Bolt, given the fact that it has the history it had to, and kind of a big following. And was that one of the first like flowable silicone at
It
the
was
time?
still silicone. It was still the rubber rings.
Was
I
it? Yeah,
published the Instructables, and I like basically I said,
that's what it
here's a
was, right?
$15 yo-yo that is the most moddable yo-yo in the world, right? And you could add the shims to it, you could add the flowable silicone, and then one thing that I did that Dale wasn't. Dale didn't love this idea. Dale was like, okay, we're gonna put Starburst on one side and O-rings on the other, and I'm like, no, everyone just wants 2 O-rings, and he's like, yeah, we'll double our sales, and I'm like, no, I'm not gonna do that. Like, we're just gonna sell them with the one that they want, you know, because like anyway, so
Oh my God, too funny.
this was the very first model that they did that had 2 O-rings because they were really into the hybrid, not because they thought it looked
Hmm.
better.
So
But
that's interesting. So wait, was it before the Hitman?
I think so. It was
It must
after
have
the
been.
Patriot, and oh yeah, yeah. I think it must have been
Huh.
because
2003 then. So it must have been like 2002.
yeah, and
Yeah, because
to
it's
be
interesting
fair
because I mean
too,
the first actual launch yo-yo that was double O-ring, I'm pretty sure, was the Mini Motrix.
okay,
If it came out of Yo-Yo Jam in terms of like so the Bolt might have beat it onto the market like that, because I remember that was a big deal when that came out, like the double O-ring versus the hybrid.
hmm
Because even afterwards everyone was telling me hybrid was no good, and I actually preferred hybrid response to play with, and everyone's like giving me a hard time, like, why are you doing this, trying to make me buy two? And I'm like, no, I play with mine, that's how I play it. So that's really interesting, very cool. Yep.
this is hybrid. This is
Is
a
it?
hybrid.
I
I
can't
think
even. I
so.
I have one of those. Asia Yokoyama gave me at Worlds one year.
I've like never opened it.
It has like the coolest side cap too. It's all like holographic looking.
Yeah. Dude, this is hybrid.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Funny.
I mean, what the original was hybrid.
Yeah, I never noticed. I never would have thought that.
It's very similar. It's a little thinner than the production model was, but yeah.
So for anyone interested, there was a time where all yo-yos basically were starburst or brake pad technology. Brake pad technology was patented, and there were a few companies, notably Tom Kuhn and Custom, who tried breaking that patent or exploring kind of like alternatives to get around the patent. But basically your limitations were a ball bearing yo-yo would either have starburst or these O-rings. And I think Yo-Yo Jam was one of the first companies to even do the O-ring in general, but it was just...
I mean, they actually had a patent. I'm pretty sure they got the patent on the O-ring actually. It's just that it didn't technically cover silicone O-rings that everybody ended up switching gears into, but they did at least have the patent pending on the O-ring and the yo-yo.
So if I redo the bolt, should I do dual O-ring and let people mod it, or should I like? I think I'm just gonna come up with like 19 millimeter, thin pads or whatever. But like should I like just go hardcore?
I mean, you can give them both, right? Like make them nice deep 19, but throw some nice O-rings in there for that classic feel.
Yeah. So I have another question here from David Bieber, and it is another two-part question. The first one, as someone who owned a yo-yo store myself, I always hated this question, but I'm going to ask it to you. Sorry, David. I'm not saying I hate your question, but this is frustrating for yo-yo store owners. How many yo-yos do you own?
Oh, me personally?
I guess. I mean, anytime someone says that, I'm like, well, there's like my stock here.
Yeah. I know.
Right?
As far as the eye can see. I feel like when you walk into YoYoExpert, it's like, I know my 8-year-old son right now, he's gotten into yo-yos a little bit. He's getting into gendamas right now too, and we've got a decent selection of both of those, obviously. And it's like he first started getting into yo-yo, and right before COVID, he was 6. And he knows we own the toy store. He kind of understands we have YoYoExpert, but he doesn't always like completely get it. And then like one day, like we were at YoYoExpert, and he was all of a sudden like, wait, do you own all these yo-yos? Like, can I have any of these yo-yos? And he's just like looking around, and like he went and picked up like I think it was like a Dazzler titanium yo-yo recreation yo-yo, and he's like, I think I want this one. It's like, like I may own all of these yo-yos, but it doesn't mean that I actually can own all of these yo-yos. But I know it's kind of funny. I'm not the biggest collector. I'm a player. I play everything. I have a few sentimental yo-yos I've kept, but I play everything. And I honestly, I cycle through yo-yos weekly. Because like I just like everything that comes in, I generally pick it up and play with it and enjoy it, have fun with it, and kind of just continue to cycle stuff through. So I have lots of like at my home, lots of bins of yo-yos that like when people come and stay for contests and stuff, they'll kind of run through and have fun playing with and stuff. But yeah, I have hundreds of yo-yos. They're not super nicely presented. I have like a stand here. It's funny too. All my display stands are filled with like they're usually filled with the returns that people, because I'm like, oh, I need to put this somewhere because I'm usually playing with all the stuff that I really like. So this is one this is one of my favorite shutter wide angles right now on my desk. That I love that, like that one. But yeah, I mean, I'm just like Yo-Yo Factory's newest ones. I just was throwing a lot at the store and showing people. So that's kind of what's with me.
As a yo-yo company owner, I try really hard not to collect yo-yos because I don't want to like someone else's yo-yo. Like I want to be inspired and I want to see what the trends are, but I don't want to be like feeling like, oh, I have to throw my yo-yo when I have another yo-yo. Like, so like, I like try really hard. And, I think for the most part, it's pretty easy. I design yo-yos based around my desires anyway. But like, yeah, as a yo-yo company owner, and I have a feeling like Ben and some of the other people are the same boat where they secretly don't want to be carrying around other people's yo-yos. Like we want to only have our yo-yo with us all the time. And
I think the other hard part too is when you play with other people's yo-yos and you make yo-yos, it can be really hard to not, like when you design a yo-yo too, to not feel like you took a design element or something, or like, you know, I feel like there is kind of this like, oh, like I don't want people to think I just stole this from them because I loved playing with this yo-yo that I've always had. So I get that. And I mean, I still remember, again, like when I was working for Yo-Yo Jam, I mean, the yo-yo that really tipped it over for us was when the 888 came out. Because when the 888 came out, I can still remember where I was when I first threw it, because we threw it, and mind you, I was working for Yo-Yo Jam at the time. And Yo-Yo Jam always had a very natural vibe, right? To like their yo-yos and stuff. It was just kind of, you know, it's hard to make a dead smooth plastic metal combination yo-yo back then, especially when they're molded. And we threw the 888 and it was like, oh, you can't feel it. Like, what? How? You can't feel it. Like, that hadn't really been done yet like that. And it was even harder because it literally was very, very similar to a Hitman shape. And at that time, too, there weren't that many, like releasing a yo-yo at a millimeter difference diameter or something like that. Like, people didn't really, like, that wasn't happening, like, in terms of, like, a lot of different designs. Like if it looked like that yo-yo, it kind of was that yo-yo. And I remember, like, having that yo-yo and bringing it with me all the time, feeling really guilty that I was enjoying this yo-yo so much when it was almost like a Hitman, but it was so smooth. And so you have those moments too. And I think at the end of the day, it's like, you got to play with what you enjoy and take from it and just kind of keep moving on, because that's, again, beautiful thing about yo-yo. It builds on itself. You take things from different people, and as long as it's not a complete ripoff, I think everybody takes pieces and builds something better with it. So at least that's what I've always loved to see happen.
So one more part to this question from David Bieber. In the past 2 years, have you seen any change in the yo-yo community in terms of its size, its diversity, and its attitude?
That's a very good question. So we definitely had been shrinking quite a bit as a community goes in terms of the contest community. Leading up to COVID happening, especially those past 2 or 3 years, it just wasn't growing the way we wanted to grow. And with that said, I think, you know, contests had some issues. Like, one of the best contests in the country was always Bay Area Classic, as you know, in San Francisco. I still love that contest. I miss going to San Francisco for that event so much. But San Francisco changed quite a bit as an area to run a contest and to live in general. And it got really difficult for them to run the contest at that venue and stuff. And I think there was a lot of that in general in terms of difficulty running contests. And so I do think there was quite a bit of shrinking in terms of trying to have these big events that bring people together. So on the one side, there was that. But then you've also got kind of these different factions between people on a Facebook group talking, and then you've got people on Instagram connecting there, and then you've also got forums. And so there's kind of like communities, and then there's also Reddit. And so you have all these communities, but they're a little more fractured and stuff. And so I think in some ways there definitely was growth. It just was hard to measure and see it because it was happening in lots of different places in lots of different ways. And, you know, coming out of that in terms of diversity, you know, not nearly as much as we want. I mean, we would love to see more women throwing yo-yos. And it's hard to, you know, obviously when a woman gets into yo-yo and they look around, there's not a lot of women to look up to in yo-yo. And I think it can not be like, doesn't make you necessarily want to stick with it right away. It kind of has taken a special person to kind of push through that. And with that said, I've seen some really amazing women get into it and stick with it. So I'm hoping to see more of that. And just in general too, I mean, I think we could do more diversity across everything would be great in yo-yo. And I think that's obviously where we get into running contests. One of the things I've been doing more recently, and right before COVID, we were in the middle of like rebooting the National Yo-Yo League to try and see like what can we do to run less contests, but make them better contests. Because for a while, the contests have been happening, but they were all run by various contest organizers. And at the end of the day, the contest organizer is really running the contest versus the league helping run the contest with the organizer. And so right now we're getting ready to kind of like reboot the whole league with like 6 very focused regionals leading into the one larger national contest. And I'm really hoping, especially with nationals this year, to try and put an emphasis on community building and try and get like a lot of people to come to the contest that aren't necessarily competitors. Because I think that's one thing the contest structure had kind of lost sight of, is they were really building, you know, the event for someone to come and compete and then leave, versus for people to come, hang out, be part of a community, and enjoy like meeting people, just to meet people, trading tricks and trading yo-yos and stuff like that. So I think we're going to try and like put an emphasis on, especially at nationals, trying to get people to come to the contest to be part of the community, and go from there. So that's hopefully going to continue to grow, but I do feel like there's work to be done. A long-winded answer.
Well, André, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for hanging out. If people want to learn more about YoYoExpert, what's the best places to do that?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about yoyoexpert.com. As you mentioned, we've got the forums.yoyoexpert.com and pretty much every other social media platform. You can find us at YoyoExpert. We're pretty easy to find. And you can find me on Instagram directly at yoyoexpert.andre. Not that I've posted a whole lot there because life has been so busy, but I will be there and posting more. So,
what about the TikTok?
Yeah, we got the TikTok. I might be too old for the TikTok, but you've proven me wrong there.
No, it's hard. I had a good run, and then all of a sudden, just they just don't like me anymore. All my views are like, good. Yeah, like all my views were like 1,000, 2,000. I had a couple that like reached 1 million, and now it's like 100, 150 or whatever. I'm just like, well, I don't know. I don't understand these kids these days. Yeah, it's because I don't know how to do the DNA bind.
Flavor of the month.
Well, thank you so much, André. It's been really great hanging out with you.
Thanks, Doc. You too. All right. See you.